Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us here in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest in this topic. I want to thank everybody who joins us online. It's been 9 years of the war, and today is day 400 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And now we will be talking about the culture front, which became an extremely important area in this war. We invited you today to present the collection of the works of Hryhoriy Skovoroda to commemorate his 300th anniversary. Our guests today are Oleksandr Krasovytskyi, Ukrainian publisher, director general and owner of Folio publishing house, and Oles Donii, head of the Center for Research of Political Values, editor of the book Skovoroda and Us. And joining us shortly will be Oleksandr Tkachenko, the Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. Mr. Oleksandr, please tell us about this collection. It's on and it's working. What was added to this collection is quite a powerful work. You all may see those 4 volumes published by Folio Publishing House. Please tell us about that. So let's start with the fact that the year of Skovoroda is coming to its equator, and I think that in Ukraine we're still lacking the respect of the publishing house and also on part of the readers and cultural actors to our cultural heritage. We still need more books of Skovoroda published not only on his anniversary, but it turned out to be so that there is demand but still very little issues of Skovoroda in the market. So this is the way that we went. First, the gift specimen of the Skovoroda works collection with illustrations by Alexander Roitbert, and then the issue wrote by Miroslav Popovich, Serhiy Krymsky, and Ivan Drash is the reissue of the 50 years old book and a collection of works about Skovoroda by this very same Ivan Drash and Yuri Mushketek, for example. It's about Skovoroda's life and work, and another issue is the collection of the works, half of which is taken by the comments by Leonid Mushkalov. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he devoted all of his life to study of the works of Skovoroda. That's a tremendous work. Half of all those texts are his texts. He was writing about Skovoroda and commenting maybe in the same amount as the works of Skovoroda himself, so it's issued in the same language that Skovoroda was writing in. It's not the Ukrainian language that existed back then or Russian language that existed back then. It's also Latin, Greek and Hebrew languages, so we see how educated the author was. I want to mention also that in the beginning of the 90s, 30 years ago, it was the first time I went to a French book exhibition of there is an issue of Chateaubriand there was an issue of Chateaubriand in every stand in every publishing house, and I asked one of the publishers, so why Chateaubriand? Well, he said that Chateaubriand is our national pride, and since the author rules don't work in his case, every publishing house deems necessary to issue works of Chateaubriand. But you see, everyone has their Montaigne's, their Balzac, their Dumas, and other issues that publishing houses think they deem necessary to issue, otherwise they are seen as unqualified in their work if they don't issue their own classics, which would have been different than the issue of other publishing houses of the same author. So now we're creating the book market in Ukraine, not from zero, not from scratch, but the real book market cannot exist, well, the one that we create we created without books from Russian Federation, so it would be not right to say that there is an issue of Skovoroda by Folio. We don't have to issue Skovoroda then, so it's the other way around. It's necessary to keep issuing them. So we will end this Skovoroda year by this volume of Pushkalov about Skovoroda, and there will be another book by Petro Kraluk about Skovoroda with a modern view of the author and his work and life. Thank you, Mr. Oles. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, as we mentioned, we're talking about the cultural front, and we fight in this front to a certain extent and analyzing the enemy's publics, Telegram channels. Honestly, it was my pleasure to observe this hole in the box about Skovoroda. They're weeping. How is it? It's the year of Skovoroda, and we only had 2 conferences having taken place in Moscow, and damn Ukrainians, they keep issuing books, they keep holding the conferences, and they make the movies about Skovoroda, so they're holding, which means that in this sector we are victorious. And we have to mention that there are merits by the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy that on part of the government. So it's not only a culture but information policy as well. So the ministry paid relevant attention to it. They assisted to the issue, to the publishing of his works. It was an issue supported by the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. And there is an advantage on part of Ukraine that we don't only have this movement on part of the government, but also by the society, by the community. There are conferences being held, different actions, youth movements. There are TikTok characters devoted to Skovoroda. So Ukraine in information and cultural front is in front. We are victorious here. And Skovoroda is a goal and an instrument in this case, but for him to be the real instrument, we have to know the content. And this is the advantage of the activities of Folio. They've undertaken a colossal job. I'm saying that what's worth reading is the works of the author, not his interpretations by someone else. They are full-scale, full-fledged. This is what should be studied. And I want to extend my greatest respect and admiration to Folio Publishing House. And Mr. Alexander mentioned the scientists who were studying the works of Skovoroda, like who were based by the one of whom was based in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is it's another confirmation that Kharkiv is a Ukrainian city, and that's yet another fight in the information front. And regarding the personality, I want to add that the actuality of Skovoroda today, I've written an article in this collection, Skovoroda and Us. It was Skovoroda and Shevchenko. Oh, Mr. Alexander is coming right here. Mr. Alexander, good afternoon. I have to repeat my sentence that I started, that it was my pleasure to see the hole in Russian box. It was hole in the box. They were complaining that they have minimum output with regard to Skovoroda, and Ukrainians devoted conferences, books, and a lot of other activities to Skovoroda. Yes, and in information and cultural front, this Skovoroda example is an example of our victory. Why Skovoroda or Shevchenko are important for us? My personal theory is that we need them as 2 wings for the idea of Ukrainian nation. Shevchenko is the symbol of freedom, and Skovoroda is the symbol of liberty. Those are 2 similar notions, but there are still differences between them. Ukrainian ethos could come to Shevchenko in a number of ways. Among Ukrainian ideologies, they were attempts to argue the participation of Ukrainian in Great Polish Project or Great Russian Project. After Shevchenko, it became impossible. It became impossible to assimilate Ukrainian ethnos. He was the one who has waken up the energy of Ukrainian nation that could not be absorbed. So freedom is something that we need to fight for our independence, and what we need now to fight for our territorial integrity. And Skovoroda is the symbol of liberty, of personal liberty. For example, he doesn't like the way he was treated in Kharkiv Collegium, and he left them, and he said, I will find families whom I will teach personally. He's a teacher. He's not as much as a philosopher, as more a teacher. For example, the archetype of Shevchenko is the waker. And the liberty, my liberty ends where the liberty of Mr. Alexander begins. So this is the way we set up the attitude to one another, the attitude to the government, to the state, and the state to us. So it's not only that he is the object of our intellectual study, he's the demanded character, the one whom we analyze, whom we advertise, and look how successful this advertisement is. It's a cool issue, and this is how it's gonna be. We will win in all fronts. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Minister, please get involved in our conversation. We haven't crossed the equator of the commemorating of anniversary, 300 years anniversary of our cultural actor, and we've seen that number of events that were already devoted to Skovoroda. We were told about huge number of books that emerged today. What else is planned? Do we plan to continue this powerful work on the cultural front? We understand that it's an extremely important front now. So first of all, thank you, dear colleagues, for this issue. The books are being issued, and it's a very important contribution. And contribution is a contribution of Skovoroda to European culture, because when you read him, it's like you've read a European author, because he had a visionary position that set the course of philosophical thought for years and years ahead in Ukraine. However, we still have some unclosed gestalt. Is the destroyed museum house of Skovoroda in Skovorodinivka, and UNESCO is about to allocate costs for reconstruction. There is a project for its conservation and further reconstruction. We don't know whether we will be able to make it this year. It would be a symbolic step. Regardless, the museum that suffered 3 years ago due to Russian aggression, because everybody who visited those areas, there is just a village and fields all around. So there was no other reason to target that place, so they targeted the museum directly. So this is what's worth being done this year. It's quite an ambiguous feeling, just like Mr. Oles says. On one hand, the Russians are howling that they have too little events devoted to Skovoroda, and on the other hand, they destroy our Skovoroda museum. So it's difficult to wrap your head around something like that. So yeah, they don't fight the Ukrainian army, they fight Ukrainian people, they fight the Ukrainian identity, and Skovoroda is a part of Ukrainian identity. So targeting this museum, it strictly fits their system of values that they confess with regard to Ukraine. Oh yeah, we have the same hoodies. Is the saying of Skovoroda, the light of freedom prevails over darkness. We cannot say that the publishers feel it now more difficult than anyone else. The publishers, just like other Ukrainians, they do their thing, and if we maintain the book market as Ukrainian, it will be the victory in that field. And if the Ukrainian readers, at account of which we live and make those books, they understand everything correctly. And today the issue of Ukrainian classics, dating back 20s, 30s of the 20th century, the executed Renaissance, and those who were writing from abroad and could express themselves directly with no regard to Russian censure or Soviet censure, all those books are being bought very successfully. Mykola Khvilievy, Ula Samchuk, Ivan Baghryany, they are the 20th century authors. They are still up to date. You can get familiarized with their works, and you may thus understand why Russia is doing what they are doing. And another issue we would be able to present shortly, maybe you, Mr. Alexander, you remember your pre-word for before Agathangel Krimsky, and in a month there will be an issue of the third volume. We will be able to present yet another prominent personality from Ukrainian culture, a person who was speaking 40 languages, having written a lot of works in different genera. It will be a return of Ukrainian culture to its fundamentals. Mr. Alexander, fortunately, as you mentioned, those books are currently in demand among Ukrainians, and it's something of our pleasures. But what's going on in the international market? Is there any interest for Skovoroda or other cultural actors abroad? Well, there is interest. I'm happy that many of our European colleagues, French and German, they invest funds in translation of modern Ukrainian authors. We had French minister visiting us. She brought those books herself. They picked their publishing houses. They picked those authors themselves, and that those are investments in popularization of modern Ukrainian word. And it develops thanks to the exhibitions where our publishers were present with their books too. Well, regarding the exhibitions, soon, in the end of May, there will be an exhibition in Warsaw where Ukraine will be the main guest with 200-meter stand, and we will be able to present the results of our publishing activities there. I hope to be there those days, and also another event will be in Tbilisi. And this is one of the countries which has also a cultural front against Russia. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please get involved in our conversation. Good afternoon, Svetlana Tkachuk, Ukrinform. I wanted to get involved in the discussion, in the formal discussion of that issue. Could you please tell us what was the way you were sorting the works of Skovoroda in these 4 volumes? So should we read it one by one, or I can pick any one of them and start reading from the middle? Well, they are divided by genera. Well, first volume is, first of all, poems and fairy tales. Second is the legends of the first period, of the early period, and third volume is the legends of years 70s, 80s of the 17th century, and the fourth volume is his work Dream, which summarizes his life and works, and some minor works and notes. And this volume is added by the records of Kovalinsky, his student and a friend who was his first biographist. Could you please tell us the works are published without translation? Well, he was writing in foreign languages. He was quoting different sources, different texts in foreign language in his works, and I need to add that he was not only a teacher and a philosopher, but he is the interpreter of Greek and Roman classics for Ukrainians of those times. He explained the works of those whom we continue to read even now, and whom we see as more than classics: Socrates, Epictetus, Epicurus, Plato. He has a lot of quotations in his works. And the last question is whether you're going to issue Skovoroda in English. Do you plan to issue him abroad? Well, I would say this way: it's correct in the publishing world when the native speakers of a language, they translate those books in their countries. So it's a question more to Mr. Minister if this program for translation will work. I'm sure that the foreign readers will have proposals regarding the translation of the books. Yes, we had that meeting yesterday. In a couple of months you will be able to submit applications for the translation for foreign publishing houses. In continuation of this topic, I would like to ask Mr. Minister about support of such projects. We understand that cultural projects always find it difficult to exist by themselves. They need the support from outside. Are foreign partners ready to get involved in projects like this? We stimulate them actively. They don't only issue books of modern Ukrainian writers by themselves, but they also invest in translating their authors for Ukrainian audience. It's one of the moments of how they can help us. We encourage all that kinds of support quite actively. We want to promote Ukrainian books abroad for those for Ukrainians who temporarily left. There's a lot of programs like that. We visited a military unit yesterday, and we have intention to spread those books in Ukraine too. 1 million books were disseminated within last year, starting from March last year, and there was another program open, Book for the Front Lines. We expect to get support from different sides, and book is invaluable in this case. We've seen happy eyes of our military who were asking us twice, like, you brought us those books, where are they? Regarding the Cultural Front and the book for the Cultural Front from the Ministry of Information Policy, yesterday I got a message from the airborne troops, Skovoroda, a book that was issued at the upon the order of Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. One of the guys from the front lines, he sent this to me. So this is the activity of our ministry. Well, it's cool because we see all the time that our military, they still have time to read our literature, regardless of all the extremely difficult conditions they're in. They keep reading Shevchenko, keep reading Skovoroda and other cultural actors. This support is very important for us. I think that us as the publishers were not offended in terms of attention of the society. This year was extremely difficult for everybody, and the year to come will not be much easier, but we have to create the plan of actions already now to define what will be happening to Ukrainian culture, to Ukrainian book as a part of Ukrainian culture, and libraries is the front where we'll have to do a lot of work still. After everything is over, after our victory, we will be able to understand it. Russians were destroying libraries in the occupied territories. Where those libraries were left, there were still Ukrainian books destroyed. Sometimes they were replaced by Russian books, but what's going on in the territories where they were reigning for 9 years? Do you understand how much work is still to be done there? Mr. Minister understands it way better than me, what will be going on there. Well, we're ready for that. Before the war, in year 21, we approved the vision of the Ministry of Culture, and there is a phrase that Ukraine has to become a part of the global cultural processes. And now I've realized that we are already part of the global cultural processes, so our mission is half accomplished. We have to ponder over the new role and place of Ukrainian culture, both in our society and in cooperation with our foreign partners. Our role has increased. Unfortunately, it's not expressed physically in terms of, say, funds. But Ukrainian culture should be put on the pedestal in Ukraine, not only during the post-war recovery. It shouldn't be one of the lines in this program of the post-war recovery, is the investment in our resilience on one hand, and on the other hand, we will have to become, maybe if not the leader of the cultural processes in Ukraine, but one of the leaders for sure. I don't know, we have not formulated this task yet, but it's worth to start thinking about this now. It's necessary not only for Ukrainian society, but and for the whole world itself, to have the cultural front well focused on personalities, and the war with Russians is going on about the famous characters. For example, we won that fight for Skovoroda, and further on there will be fights for example about Malevich, that Malevich is Ukrainian. We have to prove that Repin is a Ukrainian artist. That fight will be difficult. Well, just like fight about borscht, no matter how ridiculous is this comparison, but we still have to reiterate it to the world that Ukrainian culture is valuable, it's significant, and it was appropriated by Russians, so the fight is still on. Dear friends, if you have any more questions left, please let me know. If you still have any comments, please. Well, I want to invite everybody to check out your home libraries. You need a spot for new books, the new books that will be issued within the years to come. They will be numerous. For example, I've checked my home library and there is a lot of things that I should get rid of in them. I think it's right to create your libraries in a critical way. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you for your interest. Thank you, dear guests, Oleksandr Tkachenko, Oleksandr Krasovytskyi, and Oles Donii. Thank you for this conversation. I hope our cultural front will be developing and we continue working for our victory. Glory to Ukraine.